Episode 7, everyone. In this episode, I interview Kim Lee, the CEO and co founder of Dalipay. Mark Twain said that the secret to getting ahead is getting started, and no one embodies that better than Kim. We talk about what motivated her to get started and what kept her going. She shares some examples of how being lucky can be as important sometimes as being good. And after all, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Watch until the end to learn her secret to staying motivated and dealing with the grueling dual life of being an entrepreneur on one hand and an employee in a corporate environment. One of those secrets was especially compelling for me personally. It just blew my mind. So watch until the end and enjoy, everyone. All right. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today's guest is Kim Lee, the CEO and co-founder of Dalipay, which is technology that aims to bring contactless payments via palm scanning to the Philippines. KL, as she's known online, is a serial overachiever and is perpetually in pursuit of new knowledge and skills that will allow her to help more people. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, I put together a short list of her accomplishments, which is in no way a complete list, but more of a summary of the stuff that I found personally to be really impressive. So she completed her bachelor's degree in 2016 from University of Santo Tomas, or UST, go Tigers. She took up more courses after she graduated, based on what I saw on LinkedIn, related to entrepreneurship from different universities and institutions like Stanford University, Draper University, which is focused more on tech startups, uh, Asian Institute of Management, or AIM, TIP or TIP Nitro, which is a business incubator for tech startups. And she also completed entrepreneurial studies from DTI, or the Department of Trade and Industries. I'm also impressed by her body of volunteer work. Somehow, at such a young age, she's been able to give back to the community in a way that is aligned, in ways that are aligned to her passion. So she's a volunteer for UNDP, which is a youth social innovation incubation lab. She's the Asia ambassador for Manila for Make Sense, which aims to scale social entrepreneurship globally. And she's doing all of this while also working as a full time employee. So I don't know which is more impressive, but I am absolutely ecstatic that she's here with me today. So, KL, welcome to the show. My first question: at what point in your life did you decide that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And what are the thoughts, emotions, influences that drove you to make that decision?
Okay. So initially, I really thought of becoming a banker. I have a role model. It's my sister. She's an SVP for a prestigious multinational bank. So I thought I would become like her all the while. But then when reality happened after college, when I got exposed to the corporate world, I felt like I didn't fit into the puzzle. I felt underutilized in some ways, and I didn't really grasp like what am I here for? Like why am I doing this? So it's all started with questions. And so after that, luckily, I was introduced to my cousin-in-law who was then building his startup shoe business. It's called Godfather Shoes. And
Yeah.
then from there, he volunteered to mentor me, like everything that's in the shoe business, like how you would run a startup from the ground up. So I was exposed to that. So I wore multiple hats. Like I was exposed to marketing, writing, content management, digital marketing, facing clients, and that sparked me joy. Like it felt me like I felt really alive. So that was the time when I realized that okay, maybe the startup ecosystem is for me. And then 2 years after, I realized, okay, maybe I should do something on my own already. So that's when I started actively looking for incubation programs. And that was when I got introduced to Idea Space. And ac- that's where I, what do you call this, found my partners. So we
Oh,
are actually
partners for
five.
Dalipay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, got it.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, and there's really the reason why I started this podcast is I myself find myself in that situation, right? Like I've been in the BPO industry since I was 18 years old, so about 15 years now. And I actually discovered who I was in the industry as I was growing up and moving up in rank. But I also discovered who I wasn't supposed to be from the lens of the corporate management. You know what I mean? Like you're
yeah.
supposed to fit a certain mold, and if you don't fit that mold, you have to change, right? And so I found that I had to change if I wanted to progress in my career, and I did, which is kind of unfortunate, but I don't regret it just because it got me to this part of my life right now where um, I'm starting to rediscover who I was, and that's why I started this podcast because I really want to, be true to who I am, and that's why I feel so much joy in talking to people like you and a couple of others that really inspire me to pursue what I feel like my purpose is in life. So I really appreciate that. The other thing too, from what you said, is it's pretty fortunate that your mentor married into your life, your cousin-in-law, right?
Yes. Exactly.
Um, was would you say that without that cousin-in-law, that mentor that you were able to incorporate into your life, would you say that you wouldn't have followed this entrepreneurial journey that you're on now, or
Yeah, definitely.
oh,
He was the major catalyst, like really. And maybe, okay, interestingly, it was at that point in my life where I was really like, at I felt completely nothing. Like it was, I was breaking down and everything. But then when I was, what do you call this? When I was really looking for more, I think it's really true that when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. And so he came at the perfect timing.
that's a very good
So
proverb. Yeah. Yeah, that's very fortunate. So you met him, and then how exactly did your first few conversations go? Like, could you describe how that went? I imagine that maybe you opened your heart to him about all of the
yeah,
frustrations you have, and then he came in with, yeah. So maybe you should tell the story. Sorry, I just imagine it that way.
yeah. I was actually very vulnerable that time. Like I authenticity is very important. Like you become your own biggest critic. And so I think that's when people really get to connect with you. Because like we're in a world where, parang we glamorize achievements and everything, but then you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Really, like you don't know when a person is on the verge of breaking down on the edge, like suffering from a panic attack or anxiety attack. You don't know. You
Yeah.
just know what they are posting online.
Nobody really
So
posts their rock bottom. Like they don't post that
yeah,
at all. Yeah, they always post
yeah.
the, you know.
So my vulnerability opened up this whole new different world with my cousin-in-law. And I was grateful that I actually really am still grateful that he stepped up and just really offered me whatever I can learn.
That's amazing. And vulnerability. That you said something very interesting because you kind of equated vulnerability to authenticity, which means that you have to be your true self, right? Which also means that you have to put away, like if you want to be in this journey, To me, what that says is you have to be like you have to set aside your pride, your
Exactly.
ego, and just be willing to learn as much as you can because you're gonna get beaten down and stepped on a lot. I imagine just from what I've heard from like people like Kevin O'Leary. I was watching a YouTube video of his, and it takes a different type of person to really make it in the world of entrepreneurship. So if you feel like you're someone that is already really good or you already know things, then uh, you're in for a rude awakening, I imagine. Yeah.
Exactly. Because like in entrepreneurship, like going through everything, I just felt more humbled. Like, okay, I don't really know anything in this world. And that's what excites me even more. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And also for me, one thing that also really excites me when you talk about like what's exciting about entrepreneurship, actually a couple of things I'll just share. Um, the one thing that makes me kind of angry too is when I think about the number of hours I spend in the office building my like building the dream of the owner of the company, right? When I could be spending that same amount of time building my own dream. And then the other thing too is like when it comes to purpose, I feel like it's really important that um, there's alignment between what you want to happen and the values that you have in life, like what your business is and the values that you have in life, like really being able to bridge that gap between helping other people and like turning up profit, right? So yeah, that's and in that way you can probably weather all of these because you're gonna have failures in life, and so if there are failures, like for me, when I fail in the office, it feels bad, but when, like in this podcast, whenever I feel failure here, because this is one of the biggest passion projects that I have going on right now. But so when I fail here, it's fine. It's fun. It's enjoyable just because it's like you learn, right? And I think that's really important to be in order for you to be a successful entrepreneur, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I just like to chime in, like, put a different and somehow radical perspective on things. Like when you said, like, working for a company and like really helping them build their dreams.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I want to echo that. Like, I can honestly feel that way. But I think one thing that helped me, like, still continue work for a company is that I pick startups, because in startups you actually have a close relationship with the founders, the owners, the CEO, and then you get to understand how they think, like what's their vision. So I'm actually really fortunate that I'm working for an e-commerce enabler, and I, I started writing for them, but now they mentioned that okay, you're underutilized KL. You should be helping project managing uh, certain projects already. So I think that really helps that you
Yeah.
have a close connection with them.
Yeah, I love that. I really, really love that. And, that's something that I never actually thought about. You could still be an employee
Yeah.
and you would still be building someone else's dream, but
Yes.
it becomes more mutually beneficial, not
Exactly.
just in the money, because money, I mean, you can earn money, right? But the learning, the experience, the knowledge, I guess the exposure, right, to how
Exactly.
these great people, successful people think, their values, and I guess it also helps you on your journey. That's pretty cool and kind of I guess mind blowing for me because I haven't really thought of it that way. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because
Sorry.
you're aligned. Because you're aligned. And what's actually interesting is that they're really supportive because they know that I have Dalipay on the side. So
They're okay. They're okay
they
with that.
make
Yeah.
the time, yeah, they make the time to actually check up on me. Like, how's the progress? And so like you get an instant mentorship. So if you're really struggling about your job right now, I just want to tell whoever is listening to this podcast to explore like a very tight knit startup world where you can get to interact with the founders.
Yeah, that's powerful. And nobody has really ever given me that type of advice. So I feel very fortunate to hear that. And I will follow that actually. Because right now, the way I'm set up in the BPO, so I was watching another YouTube video, or maybe just a screenshot of the video, where it says a salary. I don't know if you've heard this, but a salary is what they give you to forget about your dreams, something to that effect, right?
Yeah, I heard
And
that.
that's where I feel like that's where I am right now. It's very hard to quit my job just because it pays so well, and at the same time, if I did that, like if I had to let go of that, it'd be very difficult financially, right? But what you said makes perfect sense. Like it makes so much sense right now. I should find something that aligns what I want with the work that I do. So yeah. Thank you. So thank you for that. So I guess the question, since you already gave that advice to the listeners, right? Like the question the listeners would probably ask, and I'm asking is, like, how do you find these guys? Like, how do you find? Where do I find the startup communities, or where are these startup founders that I can approach and pitch my services to, so to speak?
Okay. So first, look into your warm contacts. So it's actually interesting because the owner of this company is the sister of my best friend.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay, small world.
Yeah, small
Uh,
world.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So warm contacts mean these are the like first degree connections that you
Yes,
have.
first degree
Okay.
within your friends and family circle. But uh, if you don't have that, second actionable tip would be LinkedIn. Very, very important. Like,
Mm,
um, what's interesting, I actually read recently is that uh, a college degree, may not get you the job that you want, but 4 months of consistent, what do you call this, posting or connecting on LinkedIn might even get you better chance of landing a job that you want.
yeah.
So LinkedIn actually opens up to you a whole new different world.
Okay,
So
that makes
step
sense.
two.
Follow up question to that, because everyone is in LinkedIn, right? Like the good companies, the I don't know if bad is the right word. It depends on
Mhm.
the context and what lens you're looking at it from. But let's say the context here is the good companies are the startups that you're looking for, where you can get the learning that you need, but also providing the service to their own dreams. So
Mhm.
it's mutually beneficial. So how do you determine which companies are the good ones, startups, where you can learn, and the more, I guess, traditional ones? It's not usually term bad, but more like just salary. You only get salary in exchange for your time. Where in the startup you get learnings and experience and guidance and all that stuff. How do you separate those two when you're in
Okay.
LinkedIn?
When you're on LinkedIn, I think the very crucial thing to actually start with is to do your research. First, go to their LinkedIn page or Facebook page. And then second, you will find who are the employees or who are the founders behind it. So go to their personal profile and just really look at their past experiences. And then all the things that they're posting and the activities, like you would have a grasp of who
What they
they are as
stand
a person
for?
and
Yeah,
what they value. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, powerful stuff, man. That's pretty smart. And then, does it make sense to filter like the size of the company? I think you can do that in LinkedIn, right? Like, do you want to filter those that have less than, let's say, 100 or 50 employees? Does that make sense, or do you want to just keep it open and just look through everything?
I personally didn't go through the filtering process, but yeah, I think that would be a great start. Like if you really
Yeah,
want to have the close interaction with the founders. So
yeah.
filtering really helps.
Okay, Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's I'm pretty good for this podcast. You can end right now. I'm pretty happy with that. Just kidding. Still have a lot to cover. So thank you, by the way, that for that advice. I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that, but I personally really do. I've never thought of it, so I can't stress enough how good that advice is. Um, my next question for you would be: were there? So you met with your cousin-in-law, and he's been
Mhm.
mentoring you. Were there any emotional or mental roadblocks that you had to overcome before you made that decision to start or to become an entrepreneur and be on this journey?
Yeah, actually, to be honest, there are a lot of doubts.
Mm.
Really, there are a lot of doubts. But my cousin-in-law, who was my mentor, like was able to chime in and give me all the resources that I can have. So, for example, number one, books. Number two, documentaries from your personal heroes. Like for mine, it's Steve Jobs. And
Mm.
then number three, podcasts. Just like what we are doing now.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? Like we're able to give back. Could you give some examples, like specific examples of doubts that you had in your mind, like maybe one or two, so that the listeners may be able to relate directly to some of the doubts that you had to work through and how you did?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So all the while, the thoughts running in my head was, is this gonna work? Am I good enough? Those two. Is this gonna
Mm,
work? Am I good enough? So
wow.
then what actually worked for me was to list down everything that I can do better than anyone else, like my talents, and then what I want to do. So then you have like a marriage of your talents and the things that you want to do.
Got it.
So yeah,
That kind
and
of
that's where I discovered,
yeah.
and that's where
Sorry,
I
keep.
discovered that I'm good at writing and speaking. So
Yeah.
that's why I've entered into that space already. So
But
just
speaking
actually
in
list out everything.
But speaking and writing, how do those two translate into the Dalipay startup that you
Okay. So for writing, sige, for writing, I actually do most of the content stuff. So everything that you see there in our
have? Mm.
page, I do that. So
Oh,
that's the
okay.
writing part. And the
Got it.
speaking, yeah, the speaking, it's in the pitching competitions because more often than not, 95% I do all the talking. Yeah, like when there are questions and everything. Because like in a tech startup, like you don't have, I mean, you can't assume that people understand what you are doing,
Right.
right? Because there are actually a lot of jargons and everything, like
I think
blockchain
you
is
have
becoming
to. I think you
yeah.
have to assume the opposite, right? That they don't know anything
Hmm,
about what you're saying. Yeah.
exactly. So just make things very simple and crystal clear for people. So I think that's one thing that I'm quite good at, simplifying things.
I
So
like
I'm
that.
sort of like a translator for my tech persons, tech partners, and I'm
Yeah.
sort of like their translators.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that's really powerful too. I mean, I think it was Warren Buffett that said one of the things that you really need to be successful is communication skills.
Exactly.
Which makes me think actually that regardless of which company you started, whether it's the Alipay or something else, I think your skills would translate to success for whatever company you join, right? So that's pretty
I
cool.
hope so.
Yeah,
I
'cause
hope so.
if you can translate jargon coming from Dalipay into simple terms, then you can probably do the same thing for like anything else. I mean, blockchain's pretty new. You mentioned blockchain, and
Yeah.
it's pretty. It took me a while to get the concept and how it actually translates into. But I get it now. But it's still pretty hard because it's so new. It's
Yeah.
so radical, right? And I
Exactly.
know companies will pay a premium for someone to be able to market their concept and their product in a way that everyone would understand. So that's a skill that's pretty universal, I would say, right?
Yeah. And it's actually interesting because like a few days ago I was talking to my niece, and then like all of a sudden she told me, Tita Kimby, I want to live with you. And I asked her why? Because when I talk to you, I just feel smart. Yeah, because I I I what do you call this? Like I just make an intentional way of explaining things to her in a
Yeah,
child language.
in a way that she can relate to, right?
Yeah,
In her own language. Yeah, because that's important. I mean, the audience is different a lot of times. Like people absorb things differently. Case in point,
mm,
your niece. How old is your niece?
10, 10
10
years
years
old.
old, right? So case in point, you can't really explain it to her in a way that you would explain it to like an investor or a venture capitalist. So
Exactly.
you have to be able to adjust to the needs of your audience, and that's a skill that not everyone has, right? But I think maybe it can be trained. Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, it
I
can
think
definitely be developed.
yeah,
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 I still am a work in progress in that field.
yeah. I think that's the mindset you have to have with pretty much everything, right? Like you're
Yeah,
always a work in progress. I think the moment you say that I'm perfect, then that's when you close the door on self improvement, right?
yeah. And one thing that I
Uh,
just want to air out, like we tend to glamorize people who say all these jargons and fancy words. But really, when you're talking to an investor who doesn't get anything that you know, no, no chance. Really, no chance. So I
they
would
need,
rather simplify everything.
yeah, they need to understand it because it's gonna be, and they need to be able to trust that they understand it the right way, right? So then you
Exactly.
need to also not only do you need to adjust to the language that they speak, but you also need to make sure that you validate that the way they understood it is how you want them to understand it, right? Because they may, like, you can say whatever you want in however way you want to say it, but unless you validate, you're never going to know how they actually got it. Like, you have your own intention in your head, but you have to really, it has to be two-way communication, right? I get
Spot
that.
on. You nailed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think one example too, like historical example of I think it was of where success was derived from being able to simplify things versus those that stick with jargon is and I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, but Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison, right? Like I think they both invented the light bulb almost at the same time, or at least,
Okay.
perfected some version of it. But Edison was a businessman, he was a salesman, showman, and he was able to translate his product. And so he's the one that history uh, attributes the light bulb to versus, but I think the product that Tesla came up with is actually more viable, more good, I guess, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term. Yeah. So yeah, and that's why it goes back to having a. That's why I think that's why Warren Buffett said that having communication skills is one of the most important things that you're ever gonna need as a successful entrepreneur. Um, cool. So let's talk about idea space. How did
Yeah.
you find out about it, and how did you make the decision to join? How do you join? Like, did you meet your co-founders in idea space, or you guys all met before and then joined together? Like, what was the story behind that whole experience?
Okay. So I was actively looking for incubator programs and accelerators, and then one day I was able to stumble across like an invite or Facebook event that they have a road show coming up. So it's like an overview of how it's gonna be in the incubator program. And so I invited my college best friend, now partner, and my cousin. So that's when we started.
So there's three of you that went together, and you mentioned you had 5 co-founders, right? So
Yeah.
you met the other 2 within the program already.
No, I met the other two in the volunteer work that I am
Oh,
working
okay,
on. It
okay.
makes sense.
Got it, got it.
Yeah. So the other two, yeah,
And then
okay.
the
So
5 of you joined together the program after the roadshow.
okay, so actually, we didn't got in the incubator program at first because our idea was like really messed up, for lack of a better term. Okay, I'm really being vulnerable and straightforward here. Like we
Thank
didn't
you.
really know anything back then. So we tried joining other incubators, and luckily we got in. That's TIP Nitro. Yeah, it's an
Mm.
Asia-wide incubator program that's running for 4 months, and the demo day is gonna be on February 20. So yeah,
Okay, okay. So this is you're still in it right now.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
that's
got it.
correct.
That's pretty awesome. Um, so what would you recommend? So let's say just for the listeners out there who are wondering, who are sitting here listening to this and are wondering, um, does the business that I have in mind require me to join an incubator? Like, do I need to do that to be successful? What advice would you give to those listeners? Like, I guess, what criteria is there that would make you recommend them going into joining an incubator, or versus just winging it? I guess if that's the opposite of joining an incubator.
Okay, I honestly don't think that there's no one size fits all for startups because for one, the family business didn't join into an incubator program, but it was able to take off. And on the other side, there's us in Dalipay that's joining into incubator programs. So I think one criteria that you have to do is that if you're building something that's gonna take time and capital intensive, then you might want to consider an incubator program because it's gonna help you fast track like your network and your connections, like whoever is in the space, like the connection just really is faster than when you're doing it on your own and you don't have any mentorship.
Got it. So one benefit of an incubator program is you get to meet lots of different people that can
Exactly.
form your network,
Yes.
and that network could include mentors that will help guide
Yeah.
you along the way, and maybe even funding. You can get funding from
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
incubator
Thank you
or
for
the network
pointing that
itself.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Exactly.
And what is it? Is there anything that you have to pay or you have to give up to be a part of an incubator program, or is that free? And then, like, what do they get in return? Like, what is the
Okay.
downside? Is there a downside? Yeah.
I honestly think none.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because you have to get in. So you really have to put your best foot forward in the application program. And when you're there,
Okay.
I think the only downside is they're gonna force you to to deliver because you have this deliverables every week, or it depends on the incubator program. And yeah, so okay. There's just one thing that really varies for incubator programs. There are equity free incubators, and there are some incubators who like require equity in return of what they're offering for you. So you gotta take that into consideration as well. But either way, whether they get equity or not from you, I think it's just, it's just valid that you give them a portion of what you're working on, because in the first place you wouldn't be able to get at that certain level if it weren't for anyone's help.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. And for those that are listening, equity is ownership, right? Like you give
yeah.
them a percentage of the entire company.
Yes.
Um, so if they do require some equity, what's the normal uh, amount? Is there a normal amount, or is it also like a case to case type of thing?
It's a case to case basis, but just to give you a background, it's 5%.
5%. Is
Like
that on the high side, low side, or like middle ish?
minimum is to average.
Okay.
Yeah,
So if
it's the
someone
standard.
comes to you and says, I'll mentor you, I'll join my incubator program, and I'll just take 50%, you should just run
Oh
away.
no, no, definitely no. That's not acceptable, guys. So
Okay, okay.
I'm telling you, no.
So where does that start? So that's obviously a red flag. Where does the
Yeah,
flag start? At 30%, 20%, 20%? Anything above 20% is bad, or what is it? What would you
from what
say?
I know, the standard is 20%. That's yeah,
And anything
it,
above 20% is not good.
not
Or
really not
it's
good.
too much. It's too much.
Well, it would depend on your negotiation behind the
Mm,
scenes.
right, right. So where does it usually start to become a red flag? So 50% obviously red flag, but
Obviously, no.
that's too much.
Because the founders
Um,
are doing all the work, and
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're
yeah,
just sitting there and like mentoring, right? So 30% can still be normal in certain situations, or still too high.
yeah, I think
Okay,
so. I think
30.
so.
So maybe around 40% and above is probably uh, maybe we could say it's not standard, right? Like not your usual type of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it really depends on the management. After all, it really depends. Like
yeah.
who's running the company and
But
all.
that's gonna be like if it takes off, like and then 10 years down the line, it's worth billions. That's gonna hurt, no?
Yeah,
It's gonna
yeah,
hurt
yeah.
really bad. You gave
Exactly.
up 40% of your billion-dollar company, or maybe it won't hurt. I don't know. It depends really. So I was listening to a podcast last night about. Have you heard of Riot Games? I think Riot
Oh no,
Games.
not yet. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Riot Games is actually probably the biggest gaming company in the world. It's worth $21 billion. They're most popular, or they're known for League of Legends.
Ah, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So League of Legends probably is more familiar. So they own League of Legends, and the podcast itself. I don't know if you know the podcast. It's How We Built This by Guy Raz.
That
So
is that is quite
that's
familiar.
yeah, it's on Spotify. If you want to listen to it, it's pretty good. So he talks to founders and gets them to tell their story about how they built this, how to build their company. So anyway, the story is these two guys were very they're avid video game they're avid gamers. They love video games, and so they decided to make a video game without having any engineering experience. So and then they were successful in the end, but they had to give up like 40% of their company, right? And so they had no control over the company. But by the time that the company was already fairly successful, they weren't the decision makers anymore. But they were still considered the founders. And
Okay.
so one of the things that the interviewer was asking, guy was asking, was that did you regret giving up so much that you didn't have any more control? So what they said was they didn't regret it because they were happy to own less of something big than to own more of something small.
Well,
So, right? So yeah, that kind of puts things into perspective and makes sense, right? So, it really depends on the person if you want to own more of something smaller, you know, give up
that makes
control and
perfect sense.
yeah, right. And then what happened was eventually down the line, a Chinese gaming company bought them out. And when they bought the company, so the investors decided to sell, and since they didn't have control really, they also like everything was sold, right? But the company that they sold it to was actually good friends with them. And so the company was bought by this new company, and then this new company gave them control of the company. So it kind of turned out okay, right? So everyone was happy. Investors got their money because they were bought out, and then the founders, because they had good relationships with the new company, were able to take control back of the company, and then everyone was happy. So yeah, and the other interesting part too about their stories that and this really stuck with me. Yeah, they were asked if do they feel do you feel like, so the exact question was, do you feel like what you were able to achieve today was because of your hard work, or was it because of luck? And their answer was, it's because of luck, because there were so many variables that had they it turned the other way, then they would have failed immediately. It was such a the exact words were, they had such a low probability of success that all of these things had to happen in order for them to get where they are today. So sometimes you're just lucky, sometimes you work for it. But for me, I would say the lesson there is, because some people define luck as luck is when opportunity meets preparation, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not prepared, if the opportunity is there, then you're still gonna miss out. So you're not gonna get lucky. So yeah, pretty cool
Yeah.
story. Pretty cool
Timing
podcast
is really
actually.
everything.
Yeah,
Timing is really key.
yeah, um, yeah, definitely. So, what do you guys do to prepare for like this incubator? It's a competition, right? It's gonna be a
Yeah.
competition. So, how do
Yeah.
you prepare for that? How do you see um, yourself competing with others? Like, what do you need to? What are I assume you have like a checklist of stuff that will help you win. I mean, if you don't, I'm
Yeah.
sure those are trade secrets, but maybe just give us an idea of what it means, what it takes to win from the perspective of someone who is a founder.
Okay. So for personally, I don't really feel like competing with the other
Mm,
co-founders because we are all different, running very different business models and the likes. And I'm completely happy when I see them achieve certain milestones. But on a macro level, what would really be a defining factor for judges would be number one, the business model, and then number two, the traction. So you
mm,
have to show like a proof of concept that okay, we have this X number of customers, we have talked to this X number of partners, we have achieved this. Because it actually gives them a preview that okay, it's working because people are buying in. So yeah, that's the two major things: the business model and the traction.
got it. And when you say business model, what do you mean by that? Could you elaborate a little bit on
Okay,
behalf of me and the audience, please?
okay. So business model is essentially everything that's happening in your company, from the key activities, the day-to-day activities, the unique selling value proposition that you have, the key partners, your revenue model, your cost structure, everything that's required to run a business, to run your business, that is the entire business model.
So
So it's
basically, the
basically like
blueprint of your
yeah, the
entire
blueprint
business.
exactly.
Oh, so you kind of have so you have to put that together and then present it
Yeah.
in a PowerPoint presentation, like a 15 slides type of thing,
Yes,
or
exactly. That's
wow,
what we call a pitch deck.
got it, got it. Wow, so you're gonna have to be kind of really selective on. It's only 15 slides, and there's probably
Yeah,
some limit to the attention span that the judges
exactly.
have. How do you
Exactly.
decide what's gonna be on there?
Okay, so normally there are templates,
Okay,
but
there are templates.
there are templates, but what's really important is that you articulate the problem that you are trying to solve, how you're solving it, and how you intend to put it out in the market.
Got it. So then the
So
business plan, once you answer those questions, ties into the traction that you mentioned
yeah,
earlier, right? So how you put it out to market, and then you go into the slide where, or maybe talk about the how it's already working with um, the test, maybe, or the
yeah,
initial launch or something like that.
yeah. But there's one key ingredient that investors are looking for in pitches that most novice entrepreneurs miss out on. That's the power of stories. Because yeah, because in stories you get them to instantly connect with you. So you put your problem in a story,
Got
and
it.
then from there, like, just articulate your solution.
It's amazing. Wow. Okay. So then, so you need to tie your product, your business plan, the progress into a story that,
Whole story.
yeah. So, and you're looking for a story that is gonna trigger some sort of emotional response, or
Exactly.
oh,
The more emotional it would be, the easier it would be. Yeah. But really, emotions are powerful.
yeah, yeah. I
So
agree. I agree.
yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah, so for Dalipay, I watched your pitch on Dalipay, and you tied it to kind of the pandemic, right? Where
yeah,
it's hard to feel safe because you still have contact, and then if you're with Dalipay, you kind of erase contact from these transactions, and you kind of um, like significantly, exponentially reduce the exposure that you have on to the virus, like the potential exposure to the virus. So that's pretty good.
because okay, just to add on it, I've been on the other side of the spectrum, so I was able to judge for pitches and hackathon already for the Hult Prize. And somehow we get this pitch fatigue. Like, all of these startups are just pitching like, okay, we have the best product and service in the world, blah 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 blah. Like, okay, there are stats and numbers, but
yeah,
what's the point of all this? Like, were you even able to connect first with us? Because, like, yeah, stories are really gonna make you stand out from the rest. So yeah,
yeah.
I can't stress that enough.
So the story is how you connect with the judges, right?
Yep,
Okay,
on a
got it.
human level.
Yeah. So the stuff that happens in a Shark Tank, that's fairly accurate in terms of how you usually pitch.
Yeah,
Like,
in Shark Tank, I think they mostly do elevator pitches, right? So it's like 30 seconds to 90 seconds.
right, right.
And when you look at the quality of all the winning pitches, you will see that there's really a story involved. You would
Yeah,
notice that pattern.
yeah. Actually, especially when you get the judges to either laugh or cry, like you get the
Yeah.
real emotional response. That's usually when it becomes like they get through to the judges, and it's good for TV also. Right, I imagine. And is it usually elevator pitches? Because I know, so in Shark Tank it's really very quick, about a minute or so. And then
Yeah.
when I was watching your pitch on Draper House, it was also fairly quick. I think you had a
Yeah.
timer for maybe 2 minutes, I think, or something
90
like that.
seconds.
90
What?
seconds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So is it usually like that, or is that there are different types of pitches?
There are
That,
certainly different types of pitches. So it
okay.
depends on the organization. But for incubator programs, it's usually 3 to 5 minutes. So you have more time to articulate the vision and mission of your startup, and then comes the Q&A.
Got it. And can you talk to your like? Can you involve the judges in your pitch? Like get them
Like,
involved.
how?
Like I don't know. So I just imagine like if you're pitching a product that you claim will teach you to be as good a dancer as Channing Tatum in like 30 days or something like that. I imagine you have to kind of give them a physical type of demonstration where you can like, okay, you stand up and then I'll show you, here it is. Is that okay? Or is it,
Yeah.
or you have to bring a model, like you have to bring someone from someone else?
I mean, if you can pull it off yourself, then
Oh, okay,
that's
okay.
great.
Yeah. Got it. That's
I
amazing. I
mean,
mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
there's no clear cut rule for this. If you
Mm.
can be as creative as possible to stand out from the rest, then go do it.
So there are no guidelines. It's really, you can be creative, you can innovate
Yeah.
on how you're gonna. Okay. You just need to make sure you stand out, you tell a good story, an excellent
Yeah.
story, and back it up by numbers, right? The numbers and
Yep.
yeah, got it. Okay, cool. Kaya, I only have maybe a couple of questions left. This has been amazing. I
Okay.
learned so much personally already. I think I was already satisfied within the first 10 minutes, but just two more questions for our audience. I usually end with these. So the first one would be, do you have any regrets with the journey that you've taken so far? Like knowing what you know now, is there something that if you had a opportunity to go back, that you would change from how you did things?
Hmm. I honestly don't feel no regrets at all because I felt like I lived my life as if it were my last, and that's why I was able to accomplish like a huge amount of things already at like in my early 20s. But yeah, I honestly don't feel any regrets
Yeah,
at
that's
all.
perfectly fine. So that's really good. And I guess a follow up to that is, um, did you have any sort of way that you were motivating yourself to accomplish all those things? Or was it all just part of your personality? It's very intrinsic, or was there any type of external motivation that you used to get you through some of the tougher days, so to speak?
Okay. I think I was formed to be a really competitive person. Like I'm intrinsically competitive, but not in a way that I'm competing with other people. It's more of like I just want to be a better version of myself day in and day out. And so somehow it gets challenging because I feel like I'm not in my best shape at some points, but it's really just picking yourself up when you feel down, and just take time to recharge.
Got it. I can relate to that. I'm also very competitive in the more traditional sense, but also in the sense where I just want to make the most out of myself. So um, there are days when I just want to waste time and watch
Yeah.
Netflix, play on my PS4, and when that happens, um, well, sometimes you just can't help it. So I think it goes back to what you said, where you do need to recharge at certain times.
Yeah.
But what helps me is just going back to the vision of what I want in the future. So then,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, if you want the future to be something else or a certain way, it has to happen like right now at this moment in the present, because whatever you do right now will be what your future is, right? So that kind of helps too. Uh, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, so the last question is,
Okay.
for those that are in the situation right now where they're thinking about starting their own company, they're thinking about maybe quitting their jobs or looking for a company that better aligns to their values and the future that they want, but are hesitating or they haven't started, they have a lot of doubts, they have some anxiety, um, fears. What advice would you give them so that to give them that much needed push, just that one little push forward so that they can get started.
Okay. I think it would all essentially boil down to just starting. Like, don't think about it, just start. Because like you you honestly don't know anything. Like, you will figure things out along the way. So if you don't start, you're wasting your time. So if you want to waste time for like 2 or 3 years or more, then so be it. But yeah, like if you want to make a change so bad, then just start.
Yeah, that hits me so hard too, because I feel like I feel like I've been in that loop for the last maybe 10 or so years. One thing that I want to share on that particular point though is one other podcast. So I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts too. So this one is Tim Ferriss. So the Tim
Oh,
Ferriss show, very popular. Yesterday, I listened to the one where he interviewed. Crap, I forgot his name, but one of the first CEO of Netflix. And there's a lot of interesting stories. It was about an hour and a half of them talking. But related to what you were saying about just starting is he was sharing that when they were first building out Netflix, they spent a lot of time. Like they would spend 2 weeks on a prototype, like a website that they would design. Like they would make sure that all of the links were working, all of the graphics, spell checking, everything was up to spec. Like they made it perfect. So it would take them 2 weeks to get that done, and then they would find that it's wrong. It's not the right decision, right? And then they would spend another 2 weeks designing another prototype, and so like they realized like we gotta stop this. And so slowly but surely they reduced the amount of effort. They started cutting corners. That's exactly what they said. They started cutting corners until they got it down to 1 week, and then they got it down to every other day. And then at some point they were releasing prototypes 4 or 5 times a day. And what they learned was that it doesn't matter how many, and the prototypes that they were releasing when it was already at that level where it was a lot every single day, like there was like the links were not working, the words were spelled incorrectly, some links were dead, some functions weren't even working. But what they learned was all of that didn't matter. What mattered was they were able to get the insights, the input that they needed to improve the product. And so they got to a point, and because they were doing it so fast, they're doing all of these iterations so fast, they made so much more progress than when they were like doing the testing every 2 weeks. And yeah, so what I learned from that, because I'm a victim of that where I can't start. It's very hard for me because I overthink things. What I learned from that is that you're right. I absolutely agree. You have to start, but you probably have to start with the smallest, most inexpensive, most inconsequential version of your idea, so that you can just start right away, even if it's just on paper or like whatever least resource intensive um, way that you can start, just start. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take that advice for sure, or that's what
yeah.
I've kind of been doing. So yeah, appreciate that. So that's it for us. Thank you so much, KL, for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom. I I wish you luck with your company and your incubators. Is there any way that our audience can support you, either via social media or in any other form? If they want to follow you, where can they find you? All that sort of thing.
Okay. So you for our company, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. It's Dalipay. And for my personal page, you can find me also on the same platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You just search Kimberly Dalipay, and all sorts of Dalipay stuff will just pop out. So yeah, it's Kimberly Dalipay or KL Dalipay.
Got it. And I'll make sure to include the links to those on the notes, the show notes. So
Thank
again,
you.
thank you so much, KL. Appreciate you. Appreciate your time, and more power to
Oh
you.
wait. Before we end, I just have
Yeah.
one question for you. Since
Oh
you
yeah. Go
just
ahead.
talked about me,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
are
Go for it.
okay? Why are you doing this podcast? I
Oh.
think really.
Yeah. So I am doing this podcast for me, right? So if nobody listens to this podcast, I am perfectly okay with that. If I'm the only one who actually listens to it, I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm doing this for me because I'm a serial overthinker. And one of the things that I wanted, that I've always been stuck in analysis mode. So I'm paralyzed by analysis. And one of the things that I know works is finding mentors, right, to guide you. But at the same time, because I'm so analytical and I overthink things, I don't even know what to ask mentors. And like there's probably 100, and I can't really prioritize which one of those are important and that sort of thing, right? So I'm starting this. I got the idea of starting a podcast so that I would get um, direct knowledge, direct information, direct stories from people like you on how they got started. And the reason why it's a podcast is that just in case there are other people like me who might benefit from this, it's out there at least. But yeah, and as you may have noticed, most of the questions, if not all the questions that I've asked, are related to how to get started. How to get started. It's That's for me the biggest challenge, and personally, and at the same time, I feel like once you get over that, just starting, I think it's just gonna snowball, and it's gonna be so much fun, so fulfilling, and it's gonna just you're gonna just keep that momentum going forward, right? I assume, I imagine, I think so. I believe that. Yeah. So that's my answer to your question. So thank you for
Yeah,
asking that, by the way.
yeah, and rest assured, it's not just gonna be you listening to your podcast because for sure I'm gonna be one of your biggest supporters. Like I'm gonna share your podcast like crazy, even in Dalipay channel. So don't worry about it. And I really believe in the value that you are providing. So just keep on going.
Thank you so
Keep
much,
going.
KL. Appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, and we'll also support you as much as we can. I think what you're doing in Dalipay gives a lot of value, and even with there's a lot of opportunity. It's a big market. So, yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you
Hey,
so much,
thank you
KL.
so
Have a good
much.
one. Appreciate
Bye.
it.
Bye.
Bye.